Family shapes us and molds us. So what happens when OP finally gets to run her own game? Let's throw another log on the fire. This horror story is the most recent one, taking place about 5 or 6 years ago when I was a junior in high school and already anxious to graduate. The good news is that this is the only story that's really more stupid than traumatic, probably because it doesn't feature my pony murdering brother or my bear murdering dad. So by this point in time, my dad had stopped playing D&D with me entirely. I would be met with so much hostility if I ever dared to ask him to play that I avoided making the request with my life. Since it would be a good 4 more years until I played some actually good D&D at college, and not even knowing that at the time, I elected to find someone new to play D&D with. And why look no further than the confines of my own home? My sister and her husband, then boyfriend, now my brother-in-law, were still living at home at the time, so I decided to poach them for my own purposes. Problem is, they don't know anything about D&D, so I decided to DM for the first time, hoping I could make something out of the situation, despite barely understanding the rules myself. I mean, we only had 2nd edition books in the house. So I did what any teenager does, which was to completely rip off someone else's homebrew idea that I found online and then pretend it was my own. I don't even remember where I saw it. Probably Yahoo Answers of all places, because I spent a very unusual amount of time on that site back then. And the idea was basically to put your players in a horror-themed campaign inspired by the classic board game Candyland. So that's what I did. Sister made a girly wizard. Brother-in-law probably made some fighter. I don't remember honestly. They met at a tavern, of course, and brother-in-law's attempt to harass the male barkeep should have immediately tipped me off to how he was planning on approaching D&D for the first time. Oh well, you live and you learn. So some normal roleplay happened. Then they got sucked into a magic Candyland board that transported them to the fabled place. I had them land at the entrance of Peppermint Forest and took the liberty to describe the eerie silence and cold of this twilight-stricken minty tundra land. I wanted them to feel that something was off about this place so that they would investigate. But brother-in-law already wasn't taking it too seriously and started throwing snowballs at my sister's character. After some goofing off, they entered the forest and I continued to try and amp up the creep factor with narration. I painted the picture with light foggy snowfall and explained how the pointy, peppermint striped trees were unlike anything they've ever seen before, and a chilly wind blew through the forest that caused their hair to stand on end. I was really going for it, but neither was really noticing. So after a good deal of walking, they heard a strange sound in the distance, a rhythmic series of chopping sounds, and soon they came across their first NPC, the Peppermint Lumberjack, or my adaptation of Candyland's character, Mr. Mint. So I had it all planned out. They were going to talk to Mr. Mint, and he'd be all creepy and cryptic, but would still give them instructions to get out of the woods. He'd go back to chopping peppermint wood, but little did they know, he actually gave them incorrect directions that would get them lost instead. After making camp, Mr. Mint would come and attack their tent in the night, because he was secretly a serial killer. That would be their first combat of the game. Yeah, that's not what happened. I understand now that players are always going to pick the plan that you're least prepared for, but I couldn't anticipate just how committed my brother-in-law was to derailing my campaign by being a jerk. So I described the strange pink-striped man who's chopping these peppermint trees. As I was giving a few key details about his appearance, I made a comment about the unusually clear, glass-like axe the man was using, and brother-in-law instantly fixated on this detail alone. He kept asking me questions about this axe, and I got irritated because I wanted them to, engage in dialogue with the guy. After a bunch of questions from brother-in-law, I admitted that I imagined the axe was made out of boiled sugar, hard candy, so we would move on with the story. Sugar axe, cause we're in Candyland. I thought this would satisfy him and he would finally try talking to the guy, but instead, brother-in-law stepped forward and said, "I reach for his axe." He tried and Mr. Mint yanks his axe away. Duh. Brother-in-law says he's going to try again. Mr. Mint pulls his axe out of reach yet again and asks who they are, because as the DM, I might as well start the dialogue if they weren't going to. Instead of saying anything to the lumberjack, brother-in-law says he reaches for the axe a third time. At this point, I snapped and said, "Brother-in-law, he's not going to just give you his axe." There was a pause, and then I reached for his axe again. At this point, I lost my cool. I let him try and told him to make a saving throw after. He succeeded and dodged Mr. Mint taking a swing at him with the axe. I tried to explain to brother-in-law that this guy has no idea who he was or why he's trying to steal the axe, so obviously he's going to try and defend himself. Instead of sorting out the misunderstanding through roleplay, brother-in-law draws his sword, and I just said forget it, and had everyone roll initiative. In just a few short rounds, brother-in-law butchers Mr. Mint to death on the spot, and my serial killer subplot dies with him. Brother-in-law triumphantly claims the sugar axe as his prize, and asked me what kind of special stats it has. I told him that it doesn't. It's just a normal wood-cutting axe that I reskinned for the campaign setting. Brother-in-law shrugs. I felt the spark of railroading and said that a sudden blizzard blows through the forest and they'll take cold damage if they stay for too long. They luckily picked up on this cue and ran through the rest of the peppermint forest to continue on with the story. At the outer entrance of the forest was the beginning of the plum trees that Candyland fans may recognize as where Plumpy lives. They never got to meet him though, because when they found a girl passed out on the ground next to a half-eaten plum, she was going to be an NPC guide and a healer. They realized they couldn't wake her up naturally because there was some kind of enchantment going on from the magic plum she ate. So my sister sorted through her spell list and said, "I guess I'll use this Burning Hands spell to wake her up." I explained to her what Burning Hands actually did and if she still wanted to cast it if it was going to shoot fire everywhere, and she said she did. I was already emotionally checked out from the game after my brother-in-law's antics, so I just let her cast it and then explained that she caught the plum trees on fire from the out-of-control spell and they all died in the ensuing forest fire. I then went to go cry from frustration in my room after that and didn't play D&D again until my third year of college. Looking back, I know that I was definitely at fault for a good deal of what happened, and I didn't handle it as well as I could have. In the end, I acknowledge that my sister and brother-in-law just aren't D&D people, and I expected too much from them. Also, I was too hard on my sister for not understanding a spell, which I regret. Luckily, I learned my lesson, and my sister was never upset with me for how I abruptly ended the game and got angry. Now I play D&D with a great group of friends, and my own homebrew is a lot better managed. And I even come up with it all on my own instead of plagiarizing off others. So I definitely wasn't expecting 8 whole stories in the end, but here we are. To all of you who have kept up with all of them, thank you. Your support has been immeasurably important to me, and to anyone who was worried about me, I'm okay and happy. All of these stories I shall dedicate to Snake Eyes the Pony. Running your first game as a DM is tough. Running it for new players to the genre is even tougher. I'm glad that OP understood her fault in this situation and has used it to become better, which is rare for most horror stories. At least the series overall can end on a high note. What do you all think about this series overall?